everyone, welcome to this talk on the college applications timeline. Basically, what to do and when to help you get an idea of how to navigate your college applications journey. I'm Priyanka. I am a college counselor slash SAT or ACT test advisor. And I've been doing this for a little over a decade. So really started off working for a big company. And then over time, I started my own business, Let's Talk College. And the main goal of my business is basically to make sure that 98% of all college applications process related content is free. So it's one of those where there's a lot of mixed information that goes around in this industry, in this practice, and it comes from various different companies or various different experts, so to speak. And I kind of wanted to make sure that everyone is on the same page so that when you do decide to have a college counselor or you do decide to do your test prep or whatever it is, that you're well informed and then choosing to delegate this out. It's not that you're acting out of fear or anxiety or stress or overwhelm or any of that. It's that you're well informed and you know what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. And you're now simply saying, okay, now let's get someone to come in and play this role for us in our family. Okay, so if you, right now, my new website, it's supposed to be up this weekend, but this is what it's meant to look like. So you have this part, and then you'll have all the popular topics of starting your college search from scratch to testing to scholarship stuff, that gap years, financial aid information, and then there's common blog posts, everything. You keep scrolling, and there's a lot of just ways to help you get oriented. Testimonials at the end. And then there's also this FAQ section that I think it's like the quick snippets for pretty much every topic. So you'll have snippets from the college search part, you'll have snippets from tours, essays, etc. So it's hopefully the intention is to make it your one-stop resource for just about everything college applications process related. But yeah, that's the spiel. And while we're waiting for this website to go live, in the chat, I did post a link if you'd like to be contacted when the website is live. Just like I said, everything is free, and there's going to be a pop-up for the SAT versus ACT talk, and you can always download the guide and so on. So just that little thing. The contact form is in the chat if you are interested. And there would be a newsletter or a blog post once a week and so on. So that's it. That's all I'm going to leave to it. And if you'd like, you can also find me on social media. And those are snippets of information, which is sometimes nicer to have than a long blog post. So varied content, but you can find me on the Facebook page or on the Instagram. So that covers who I am and where you can find me. All right, now today's topics. So first we're going to start, now I can actually go into PowerPoint mode. So today, we're first going to start with the components of the college applications process. So what is actually involved? Now, to confirm, we only have 9th graders in this call, if I'm not mistaken, or do we have any 10th or 11th graders, just so I know how to tailor the content. And you can post in the chat, which I will constantly be checking. So just give me a heads up so I have an idea, particularly with the timeline stuff and the SAT stuff, if that's really relevant right now, or we can breeze through it. In the meantime, so we have the process, the components of the process, then we have timeline. After that, just a really, really quick overview of the SAT, ACT, which there is another talk. And as I showed you earlier on the website, you can find on the YouTube page, the library's YouTube page, it's already recorded. And on my website, like I said, it's also going to be recorded and available to you for free. So you have two options of how to get that information to you for yourself. Then we'll talk a little bit about university research and college tours. And finally, just what should you do? I like ending my presentations with concrete steps as to what is relevant and important at any given point and what you should do the moment you leave this presentation. So it's not just we have this information collected. It's that, great, now we also have a few checkpoints that we can get through, okay? All right, so it looks like we have just the 9th and 10th graders. Okay. Yeah, then we'll kind of gloss over a little bit on the 11th grade timeline, just because I'll cover the hit points, but especially for the 10th grader, but a lot of it is not necessarily relevant immediately, and it might become just too much at one point with content. So finally, we'll do the conclusion Q&A, but realistically with the Q&A, if you have questions at any given point, just post them in the chat. I'm going to have the chat running so that You might have a question about, let's say, the timeline, and we're on college tours. We don't want you to have to wait that long to have your questions or concerns addressed. Okay. Estimated time, it may be about an hour, 15 minutes. I don't even know if it'll take that long. I reworked some parts of the presentation, and because we now have a smaller group, it might have a different effect. So if at any point there's something you want clarifications on, even if it's like a personal situation or circumstance, or you want to know about your priorities, then just give me a heads up and we'll talk about that. All right. So let's start with the components of the college applications process. First, before we even dive into the content, I want to make note that just because I've divided this into 4 parts equally doesn't mean that the universities actually consider every single one of these parts equally. I did this more as like a cleaner visual representation. It's just nicer to look at, but universities can have something that's worth like a third of your application and something that's worth 40% of your application, but that's an in-house decision. It's not something that they would publicize to the rest of us. Okay, so with that said, what do we have first? Coursework. Your coursework, your grades are the most important part of your entire application, because university is basically further schooling. And how is a university to know that you will succeed in their atmosphere, that you will ask for help if needed, that you will attend your classes, get the grades, not drop out, so they're still getting your college tuition money? How will they know all of this? Well, they're going to look at your previous history. So how you did in high school is an indicator of how you might go about college. Okay, so grades are the most important part of your entire college application. Doesn't matter what you're really applying for. Even if you're going to the arts, they might look at your grades, and then your arts portfolio, and not care about the recommendations or your essay or any of that. Or if you're going to sports, they might look at, first, they'll probably look at your sports, your performance in the sports, and then they might, again, they still have to look at your grades. They can be a little bit flexible if you're going in for athletic admissions, but it's not going to be a significant difference. So let's say if out of 4.0, they prefer a 3.3 GPA, they'll make an exception if you have a 3.0, but then if you're at a 2.5, well, now it's a bigger deviation. Okay, so that it's going to be a little bit harder for you to get an exception for. So grades matter. Now, within the grades, there are 2 ways this could be calculated. You have the weighted and you have the unweighted. Now, the weighted GPA accounts for the difficulty level of a course. So if you have, let's say, a B in an AP class versus an honors class versus a standard class, well, it took different levels of effort to get to that B for each of those tiers. And the weighted GPA will take that into account. Now, the weighted GPA is at a 5.0, and a B will basically just be weighed differently for each tier. Okay, now the unweighted GPA is at a 4.0, and that one, they don't care. They don't care that it was harder to get a B in an AP class than it was to get in a standard class. A B is a B is a B. So it's just weighed equally all across the board. Okay, then we'll have the grades in your higher level classes. So your AP classes, your honors classes. And just to double check, everyone in this talk, are we all Barlow? Or do we have another grading system involved? So while you post in the chat about that, Barlow doesn't have the IB program, so we don't really have to worry about it. But if you have, let's say, dual enrollment, so I don't think Barlow does this at this point. I know Wilton does. Yeah, okay. Barlow, perfect. So I don't think Barlow does this at this point with a dual enrollment, but I know Wilton does. And which is, dual enrollment is where you have UConn classes, but you're doing it in Barlow. So it's just, oh, this math class, we filled out this form, so we're getting UConn college credit for it, but we're still attending our normal math class. Does that make sense? So some high schools will do that, and some are kind of working up to it, but it's an internal, they'll figure it out type of thing. However, the other way you could get dual enrollment is if you just go over to UConn and take online classes there, or you go over to Norwalk Community College and then just take classes there, either in person or online. And that's a way that you can take control of your dual enrollment process, and you're not depending on your high school to offer the program. Okay, so just options available here. Now, if you do choose to do dual enrollment on your own, so let's say not even with the high school UConn affiliation, whatever, it's cheaper to actually do the college classes while you're in high school than to take that same college class when you're in college. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind is you still get the same credit, you're doing the same work with the same classmates, the college classmates, but now you're just doing it in high school and there's a different fee for it. So that might be something to look into, particularly if paying for college is a concern. So those are the main categories of grades that universities will care about. And then class rank, which I know Barlow doesn't do class rank. And this brings me to the point that if there is a resource that is not offered in your high school, but is offered at other high schools. So for example, Barlow lets you take only one AP in sophomore year, which is, I believe, that computer science one. And then you have to wait until junior year or senior year to take your APs. Well, compared to Wilton, right next door, Wilton lets you take APs even in 10th grade. And that's not just one AP, you can take 3 APs in 10th grade. Okay. Well, if you end up comparing, let's say they're all applying to the same universities, which usually they kind of are. The Wilton students are by default going to have more APs on their final transcripts than Barlow kids do. Okay. So it almost seems like a huge disadvantage, except this was not your choice as a student, as a parent. This was not in your hands. So anything that is not in your hands, any program that is not offered to you by your high school will not count against you. And how do universities know this? Well, there's something called the school profile. And the school profile, I think in Barlow's case, it's about 4 pages long. It used to be online and I should have downloaded it, but I got so used to just showing you online, but they pulled it. So I can't show you what it looks like. But ultimately, it's like this 4-page document that Barlow made. Every high school will have a different number of pages. Was it 4 pages? Was it? Yeah, I think it was 4 pages. And the last few pages after the first 4 were just like, here's the universities that all of our students go to. But in that school profile, okay, so we have somebody from Staples. Okay, that's interesting, which I'm so curious to know how you heard about the program, but that's a question for later. Either way, so what happens here is that every high school, no matter which one you go to across the country, is going to submit something called a school profile. Now, in this school profile, you're going to have your school's name, mission, vision statement of any kind of educational philosophy that you might have. So like some of the private schools, let's say the Waldorf schools, have this, they follow this philosophy of playing to the natural instincts of a child. So even if the teenagers they're in high school, but it's a beautiful day outside, teachers are going to hold these classes outside and they're going to maybe have more hands-on activities as opposed to like audio and visual, lectures. So any kind of special education philosophy will be included in there. And then you'll have the data. So you'll have, hey, what's the average GPA from our high school? What's the average SAT, ACT scores from our high school? The APs that are all offered, and then roughly what kind of scores do students get on these AP exams? So if there's an AP that you hear about that you can't, let's say that another school has, but your school doesn't, again, that will not count against you. So it's all going to be listed on there. And then at the end, university or high schools will be like, here are this, the universities that our students tend to go to. So that's kind of the school profile. And this is sent out from your guidance counselor. So when you do those recommendations, so for example, if you have Naviance, which I believe Barlow still has Naviance, but if that's been updated, please let me know. Or you might have School Link, which is what Weston is using. And then Westport, they used to have Naviance, but I don't know if they still have Naviance anymore, because it's almost like there's a transition thing happening right now with different high schools using different programs. But some are using School Link, some are using Naviance. There's a lot of different platforms. What these platforms do is they'll have their college search feature, which you can by all means explore. But then when you get older, so when you get to senior year, really, this is where it's open for senior year. And open for senior year now means you can collect your in-school recommendations on it. You can collect your transcript. So all your grades will be posted on it. And then your school profile will be sent through that. Okay, so it's all done via this one middleman platform. So with that said, any questions on the coursework category? Okay. All right. Then we have testing. So with testing, while majority of the universities around the country are still test optional, The more competitive universities are moving towards test required again. So keep that in mind because we have a lot of ninth and 10th graders on the call, which means there's a lot of room for change when you finally get to that stage in a year or 2 years down the line. Okay. So just keep an eye out for what's happening, and we'll be doing these presentations again, so I'll be able to give you more updates. But yes, majority are in the test optional range. However, to give you an idea, this is a billion-dollar industry. SAT, which is made by College Board, makes well $1 billion in revenue every year from their AP exams and SAT stuff. And then ACT, this is like based on report pre-COVID, but makes about 300 million. So there's a significant income made for both of these non-educational nonprofits, and it's unlikely that these tests will just go away. As much as we want them to go away, there's arguments too, and there's pros and cons. So at the end of the day, just mentally prepare yourself to take these exams. That's really what it comes down to, is these debates on whether they're important or not, whether they show anything, or do they display a student's ability to succeed in college, which by the way is a no. No matter what the reports really say, having tutored and helped students prep for these exams, I can tell you, no, this does not determine your future success. Your coursework will, and your ability to navigate your coursework will, but not just this one exam. But with all of that said, just prepare to take these exams. Okay, that's what it really comes down to. Then we have the personal side. So the personal side will be your extracurricular activities, which are very important, because universities kind of want to see that you weren't just this checklist of items, that you actually became a person. You weren't just this kid who took only these AP classes and then had nothing else going on, or the student who tried to do all these 10 different things and didn't go into depth in any one or two. Okay, so extracurriculars matter, and we'll talk more about this because this is one of those reasons I asked what we have here, what ninth or 10th graders or 11th graders, because now extracurriculars are very relevant to the age group of the teenagers here. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on extracurriculars in a sec. But then after that, we have honors and achievements. That's honor roll, that's any kind of National Honor Society or any honor society, the Music Honor Society, the Theater Honor Society, French Honor Society, etc. The honor societies, any kind of in-school project also counts. So I'll give you an example for, let's say, Barlow, and Wilton High School has been doing something similar, has just started doing something similar, is we have this reading portfolio that all the juniors have to do, and it's the junior portfolio rather. And the max score you can get is a 6, except maybe once every 3 years somebody might get a 6. So maybe the 2 or 3 people that get that 5.5, that is an achievement. So you can write that in. Doesn't matter that no one knows what that means. You write it in. Then on the application, there's this section called the additional information. You can just explain what that is there. Okay. And finally, you have your college essays and your supplemental essays, which, just as a heads up, we all assume that college essay is like the end all be all of writing. That's not true. There's additional writing called your supplemental essays, which are mini essays that some, but not all universities can have. So you can have 0 supplementals, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on top of your college essay. So this is where students don't plan their process out correctly, and then they end up BSing their supplemental essays, which basically shows the university that you weren't really that interested. You just rush through everything. Okay. So not the impression that you want to make. So make sure we have time to actually put genuine effort into those. And then finally, the recommendations. So the miscellaneous, the recommendations, interviews, and then demonstrated interest, which right now it's not really as relevant to our pool of individuals, but I'll just give you an idea what demonstrated interest is. If you know which universities you are genuinely considering, particularly for the 10th grader on the call, right? Then a couple ways you can demonstrate interest. One is to follow this university on social media and then interact with their posts. Don't just follow, but post comments, like maybe even post some pictures of your own, let's say during your college tours, and then tag the university in that. Okay, so social media interaction. Second one is attending marketing events or any kind of virtual presentations or in-person presentations that the university might have, maybe at your high school or, like I said, virtually. You can do your college tours. Some universities track that. You can email the admissions with any kind of genuine questions, which you can email either directly admissions, or you can email that marketing representative who might have come to your university, to your high school, to talk to you about that college. So those are just a couple ways that you can demonstrate interest. Now, not every university tracks demonstrated interest. I probably should have defined this a little bit beforehand, what is demonstrated interest? Demonstrated interest is kind of, as the name shows, it's you showing this university that you are interested in attending. Now, as a university has a limited number of open seats, it wants to make sure that the students they admit are those who are likely to fill these seats. Because if I have 3,000 seats and if I accept, let's say 6,000 students, but most of them end up going somewhere else, and I'm down to, let's say, 2,999. So I have one seat left open. That's still thousands of dollars I'm losing from that open seat. So I don't want that to happen. Okay. And how do I ensure that that doesn't happen? Well, I'm going to figure out ways to see if the people who are applying, all these students, are actually interested in attending this particular university. And I'm going to have different ways of checking that. Like I said, I could have the social media, I could have the presentations tracked or the college tours tracked, or even I'm sending out emails and I'm checking, oh, who's actually opening my emails. Okay, so that's why not all universities will track demonstrated interest, and they don't track every single one of the ways I mentioned. They'll vary. So I'm just showing you what we've seen happening, but that doesn't mean that universities are using all those methods. Some might have only one or two, some might have like 6 methods. So it varies by university and their choices. Good? Okay. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about the timeline. And with the timeline, we're going to talk more about the extracurriculars and how to go about approaching especially because right now, a lot of the course selection for next year is going in. So we'll talk about the grades, and then we'll also talk about the extracurriculars, because those are the major priorities for the current freshmen, current sophomores. And then we'll talk a little bit about the juniors' priorities as well. Okay. So freshmen overall at this moment in time, freshmen, sophomores, grades and extracurriculars. Now, when you're selecting your courses, there are a couple things you want to keep in mind. Number one, don't overwhelm yourself. It's really tempting to go for the hard classes because it looks good on your application. Hold on. Okay, pause. Instead, when you design your coursework, play to your strengths. If you are great at math, maybe take that honors math course, or take the AP if that's optional, which most times that's optional for seniors. But depending on what your high schools allow, yeah, try the AP stats out if you're in junior year, if you're transitioning, or the AP calculus out. If you're good at math, if you're good at history instead, then maybe that's the AP you decide to take, or you try the AP government, or you hear there's an easy AP. Usually it's AP environmental science or AP human geography or AP computer science. Maybe that's the AP you want to try out first, right? So when you're deciding how to level up, don't just go hardcore on everything. If you're awful at math, then it's okay if that stays as standard, but the other classes you level up on. So you have to play on your strengths and weaknesses and balance out your coursework, because that's ultimately what universities are looking at. They're not just looking for this kid who only took the sole AP classes. Now, yes, if you're thinking of applying to the Ivy Leagues, it is better to pick the more difficult classes, because they want you great at every aspect of life, not just your grades, but also your extracurriculars and also your testing. So yes, they will want great on everything, but sanity is asking that you take this gradually and pick and choose what your strengths are and also what your interests are. Okay. So just something to keep in mind. And I know that some high schools have sort of this tier in between the regular and the honors. So for example, at Barlow, there's the advanced. That's fine. Maybe you don't want to take the regular or the standard math class. You take the advanced, right? You still leveled one up. Try it that way. But don't feel like you have to overload yourself when it comes to your coursework, to where you go from 0 to 100 without giving yourself any kind of prep time. What happens is usually there will be very minimal APs happening, let's say in sophomore year. So when students go to junior year, they really want to pile up. But you know what? They don't have the study skills needed for APs. So yeah, it sounds great to tell people you're taking 3 APs or 4 APs. But if you are struggling, you're not sleeping enough, you're not getting the right grades, you're messing up on the quizzes, you can't really do all the reading, then you're damaging your GPA at the end of the day. And like I said, grades matter the most on your entire application process. So it's okay if you're a junior taking 2 APs, but you're doing well in them and you're learning the study skills required and forming the study groups or figuring out how your mind takes in information, because most students don't know how their mind takes in information. So that is something to figure out, because that is a skill that will serve you going forward. Taking all these APs may help you get into college, but it's not going to help you figure out how you learn and how you effectively learn and how you effectively note take. Do you like mind mapping? Do you like just listing out everything? What's time efficient? What's not? Do you learn auditory? So you have to record the lectures and then play them over while you're doing your sport or whatever it is, right? So that's more important to figure out. And that's where students struggle, because they don't know how they learn, especially if you did really well up until 8th grade and then you walked into 9th grade and you're struggling with the transition because the workload amped up a little bit and you don't know where to start. So this is something that some high schools kind of help you help teach, but not every high school will teach you how to note take or how to learn ultimately. Okay, so that's a priority. It's when you're picking out your classes, give yourself some wiggle room so you know how you're learning, and then you can always complicate your workload a little bit later. So that's grades. Extracurriculars. Now with extracurriculars, everyone feels like you have to be doing these 5 different things and they have to be good at everything. Let's actually bring it back to the beginning, to freshman year. Freshman year and part of sophomore year, explore your options. Anything you're curious about. Maybe it's the photography club, maybe it's the environmental club, maybe it's even in the community that you want to, let's say it's around the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and you want to volunteer at a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter, whatever it is with your parents. Try that out for a weekend, okay? Or Earth Day comes around in April and there's a town-wide cleanup. Maybe it's a park cleanup, maybe it's a riverfront cleanup or a beach cleanup. Try volunteering for something like that too. Vary it up so you're exploring your interest. You can try sports out. You thought you always, soccer sounds good. Maybe some friends were doing it. You want to try it out? Go to the tryouts. See if you like it. It's an exploration phase. Okay, so you're not going to be punished for not picking this one thing and then sticking to it. It's okay if you want to do something musical. Maybe you've always done music and you did it since elementary school and you just want to continue. That's fine. Okay, but freshman to sophomore year are your exploration phases. Then around this time for sophomores, and then going forward, of the different activities you're exploring, think about the one activity at least. Actually, let's just say the one activity that you feel you can go all in on. And that doesn't have to be this grand big thing that you've now made to change the world or the region or your town, but find a way to contribute. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So I've had students, this is common, where I've had the athletic students, and those athletic students then went ahead and did a fundraiser to raise money for equipment and whatnot. And they then went over to Bridgeport or to Danbury and partnered with these after school programs for low income kids and basically played that sport that they themselves love with these kids. Okay, so that's a way to show initiative, and that you did the fundraiser, you're an athlete, you have all the skills and growth that you learned from that. You then figured out how to take initiative, which matters for universities, and then you figured out how to contribute in your way. Okay, so you didn't have to do this big grand thing. You just worked out how to join from this program to that program. And that takes effort and work, but you didn't have to go designing something new. You were just participating in something that already existed. So that's one approach you can take. If you do want to, I have a current student. He's into film. So he likes making videos. And in his case, it's not anything associated with the school. So he's not part of the school's film club because there is no club like that. He's not part of any private, like how for sports there are club teams. There's no private team of that sort for this. So he's really an independent learner and he has to figure out how to do this himself. And what he's doing is because he likes making the videos and he's part of the school's theater, he'll make trailers for the theater performances. And that's something he has been doing. So that's not where I came into the picture. But then I said, okay, well, first of all, your videos are not that good. That's natural. You're learning the process. You're in the beginning stages. No matter what age we are, when we start something new, we're not good at it. So, okay, your videos are currently, they're okay. They're good, but they're not great. Okay. Now, how do we go about leveling up your skills and also contributing to your community? Well, what if you reach out to all the businesses or nonprofits in your area, which smaller town, it's doable, or even in Westport, it's like we're not in the New York City, right? So it's doable. Reach out to them. Ask if you can make trailers for whatever event they have coming up. And that can even be other student organizations at your school. So for band, you can do that. For, let's say, Wilton Go Green, which is an environmental a nonprofit in the town of Wilton, maybe you could do it for them. Maybe you can do it for any kind of event that a food pantry or a homeless shelter or someone else is hosting. Okay. Reach out to them. Offer to make free videos for them. Then when you actually get down to making the content, each video has to have at least one skill that's new that you haven't used in previous videos before. So you have to get at least 10 to 15% better every following video. Okay, so now your skills are amping up and you're contributing to your environment, to your community in that way. Okay, so that's another way you can do it. I've also had students who they were really into veterans affairs, maybe because their parents were into it or because they just themselves were into it. And then they looked at parent support and teacher support, but they ran fundraisers for that. I think in Barlow, they've had the push-ups for vets as an event. And then with another student, it's sort of just volunteering with the organization that his parent works for. Okay, so there are lots of different options. Marshall, let's say another student, for Wilton, there's like students started this project where they were like, oh, we really love the sciences. We took AP computer science and it was really neat. And then they might have done maybe another class at NCC on coding. And they started a camp called Girls Who Code at Wilton, at the Wilton Community Center. And it started as Girls Who Code, and then it turned into everybody because initially it was to help get females into the STEM fields. But then it just turned into all the kids who want to code. But that's another way they did it. So lots of options out there, and feel free to personalize it, customize it to whatever it is that you enjoy and feel you want to do. Don't simply do these activities as just check marks, because as I told students, you're never going to get this time in your life back. You don't get this level of health back or this level of opportunity, parent support, because parents are paying your bills. So you don't have, that's like the free time that you have where you're not worried about that. So this is a great time to figure out what you enjoy doing, because that's something you can carry forward with you to college and in your later life. Okay, so don't do things just to check the boxes because they sound good and may look good on college application. Instead, it's better if you pick the one or two activities and figure out how you can go deeper into it while picking up skills along the way. So when you are thinking of extracurricular activities, 3 main points to look out for, or what universities are looking for. 1, longevity. So how long have you been doing this particular project or this particular activity for? Let's say for music, you've been doing it since you were a child. Okay, cool. Longevity shown. But then we also have growth. So personal growth. And this is what I was kind of not clearly stating, but getting to when I was talking about how you play to your interests, which is, how did you grow as a person? Did you stay in your own comfort area, or did you challenge yourself in some way? Yes, you want to go volunteer at this particular organization or whatever it might be, but is mom making those phone calls, or is dad making those phone calls, or are you the one writing those emails and making those phone calls, right? So how did you grow? Did you do organizing this event or this particular activity? Or again, did a teacher do it or did a parent do it? Because that's different, right? So did you show that you took initiative on something? So that matters, growth. And then the third one is demonstrated impact. So what was the impact factor? How many people did your work impact? And that doesn't have to be, again, it could be 5 people, could be 10 people, could be 50 people. The number doesn't have to be fancy. It's all of these put together that matter and the lessons you've learned. So it could very well be in a job. Okay. Maybe you're working as a waitress or a barista or locally like a hostess at one of the restaurants, which I've had students do that, host or hostess and so on. Okay. That sounds boring because a lot of students have been like, that doesn't mean much. I work in a smoothie shop or I work in an ice cream store. Okay. What did you do while you were there? So how long have you been working there? And that's fine if you're switching jobs. That's perfectly acceptable. That could be one of your extracurriculars that you're just hopping around on. It's not your set in stone, like the one project elective. Okay, that's fine. But then in activities like that, did you learn how to deal with high pressure situations or did you screw up everybody's order? Or if you're working at a grocery store, then if somebody yelled at you, which I think that's something that students or teenagers come across, is they have to face an adult yelling at them, and this adult could have been having a bad day or whatever it is, but this teenager has to learn how to deal with it. So did you yell back at them? How did you go about managing it? That's a skill you've acquired. Did you, again, when it comes to the busy time, did you actually mess up everybody's order? No. So you learn how to work well under pressure. You learn how to well work in a work environment. You have a manager you have to answer to. You have colleagues whose schedules you might have to coordinate with if you need somebody to fill in for you at some point, or you're filling in for somebody. You're learning how to manage money. So everything that seems boring in some ways, there's always a story that can be told behind it. And ultimately, when you are thinking of the college application itself, it's not necessarily what you did so much as the experience you gained and the story you told for it. Okay. Any questions so far on anything? Okay. So yes, those are the two major heavy hitters for current freshmen and sophomores. Your grades, figure out how you're going to navigate your grades. If they're low, are you going on Khan Academy or watching YouTube videos? Are you going to your teacher for extra help hours? Are you getting a tutor or a class or whatever it is? Are you basically getting control over your grades and your studying process? And then your extracurriculars, which you've explored and you can continue exploring all the way till graduation, but just over time, make sure you come across that one or two activity that you want to deep dive into. Okay, so not everything has to be this deep dive. Pick the one or two and then feel free to explore anything you're curious about outside of that. Okay, all right, so after that, we'll have the college tour stuff. So college tours, you can start as early as freshman year in that. I recommend just driving through campuses. If you're going on vacation somewhere, you're going out of town, you're doing a long road trip, visiting family anywhere, there's a university nearby, just minimum drive through it. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're never planning to attend that university or even apply there or anything, drive through it. Because what happens, it helps students get an idea for what different types of university campuses look like. So what's a small campus look like versus a large state university versus a liberal arts university? So you start getting ideas for that. And then it's also the students start kind of releasing some of their anxiety that comes with this college applications process, because come junior year, and especially this time junior year, and then the next 2 months, we're going to have freaked out students. It just happens. It's their schoolwork kicks in, and then this fear for their future life also kicks in. So as much as they think college is cool, it's going to be cool, that's a part of it, but then there's this reality and the fear that kicks in of, oh my god, my life is going to completely change. I'm expected to know what it is I want to do for the rest of my life, and so has this figured out, they're going to major in this and go to these universities, and I don't know what it is I'm going to do, and I'm so lost. And this whole like emotional bubble starts kind of blowing up until there's breakdowns, there's arguments, there's ignoring or avoidance. And to help diffuse that, if you start your college search process early. Just even driving through, it eases some of that tension that could happen there because there's less freak out. Students are less intimidated by universities and looking at universities if they've been doing it when there was nothing at stake. Okay, so like I said, at least at minimum, just drive through the universities, and you can, of course, get out of the car, spend an hour or 2 hours walking through if you'd want to. Okay, if you happen to have the time and you want to, then by all means do that. It can only help if you start early with the college tour stuff. It doesn't have to be officially registered. You're quite literally just finding a parking spot and at the university and giving yourself a tour at that point. If you want to do the official college tours, you can start at any point, ideally around sophomore year, definitely in junior and senior years. Now, some universities factor this in as their demonstrated interest, but not all universities do. So I recommend first, I kind of have this system I go by when you're doing your college search. We're going to jump to that really fast, which my system is that once you start your college search, which let me actually show you how to go about doing that. We have the time. Yes, we do. Okay. So when navigating your college search stuff, go onto either Naviance or I just use College Board's college search. I just put it in there. I'm showing you how to get there, so I'm not jumping directly to the website. The website you're looking for is this bigfuture.collegeboard, blah, blah, blah. College Board Big Future. And you have your filters. Now, every student at this point, yes, even the ninth graders have a College Board account because they've all taken the PSATs before. Okay, so if you've taken the PSATs before, it was all through College Board. To check your scores, you had to log into College Board. So they all have an account. So you can sign in if you want to. If not, you can just run a search on your own. If you know what you're interested in, then by all means enter it in. Now, one point I want to make, let's say I pick this, and I'm just going to pick the next one on the list. If I pick multiples, the filter will only search for universities that have both programs available. This is not an or, it's an and. Okay, something to keep in mind. And if you don't know what it is you want to look at, by the way, then we just go in and filter by other stuff. Maybe it's location. Some students want to stay in this New England area. Great. Then you can select all the states that apply. Maybe it's a distance from your zip code. Maybe it's the zip code of your house currently, or it's the zip code of a relative's house in a different state. Okay, that's another option. Then you can do the type of universities, which I think for most of us, it's going to be the four-year university. Maybe you have a preference of public, private, technical, international universities. Maybe there's any kind of mission. There's also the religious affiliation if you're planning to apply to any kind of religious universities. And then, of course, any kind of specific programs you're looking for. So if I just narrow it down, notice that we have over 2,000 four-year institutions in our country. Then there's always affordability. So how much of your financial need may be met. Ignore the fees part at this point. It's not relevant because you can always get your fees waived if you email the university and let them know about your financial circumstances. So a lot of universities will just email you as a part of their advertising marketing. They'll email you fee waivers. Go for it. If they don't and you want to attend that or at least apply to the university, then just email admissions. Teenagers email admissions, not parents, and let them know about your family circumstances, and they'll probably give you this coupon code, like the discount code, coupon code, which just waives your fee for you. So then there's what size campus do you want? This is where driving through universities to get a feel for those different atmospheres really helps, because right now it's all theoretical. If you haven't seen the campuses and what they could look like or feel like, then it's all theoretical. And I had a parent tell me, she's like, once you kind of look at a couple, even two of each, you've kind of seen them all, because there's only so much variety you're going to get in a small liberal arts university. At that point, it's just maybe these specific traditions, but the overall, let's say the intimate feel of the university or that nice, whatever it is, like the environment that you're going to be in, it's all going to feel the same at every small liberal arts university. Or if you want the large university, you go check out 2 or 3 or even 3. And ultimately they all feel the same. There's a lot of activity going on. It feels kind of eventful. It's nice. There's a lot of energy, but it's also big. So once you look at a few of each, you might not even have to tour every single university on your list because you see the label and you're like, oh, you've seen enough of these to know what it's going to feel like. Okay. Then you have your filters by setting. So you want to be in a city. Some students want to be in Boston. Some students want to be in New York City, or city adjacent. So you can do the urban and suburbs. And then if I had a student who wanted to work with horses, well, she's not finding that in the city, right? So her setting is a little bit more rural. That works too. If you have an idea, anything you don't know, just leave it blank, because it is possible to narrow your results down so much that even though we have over 2,000 options, you get like 3 as your final or 0 as your final. And it's because College Board is an external filter. Universities may have all these programs and everything available, but it's just that this filter did not account for everything that this university has. So you pick the major heavy hitters that you feel are important to you, and then you can always go to the university's website and we'll talk about the points of research you do on the university's website. All of this happens before you schedule your college tour, or it can happen before you schedule your college tour. You're not obligated to, but if you, well, let's do this first and then I'll get into the other points. Okay, campus services, disabilities, which the other thing that's not included in here for disabilities would be the ADD, ADHD, anyone with a 504 plan. If you have a 504 plan currently, then you will have to reapply at university, okay? And that will be usually done through the Disabilities Center. So something to note. And then you can have, really with the credits, this is if your AP classes count and such, but I think you can just leave that one blank. Then admissions, so how competitive of a university would you like to apply to? You can filter by scores, or you can just pick acceptance rates, okay? Don't worry about the deadlines part. Even if you're a senior, don't put in that filter yet. Don't worry about the application part. Really, the only major sections in this particular filter will be your test scores and your acceptance rates. And then reach match safety, that's the feature that's available to you if you log in. So I can't get into it because I'm not logged in. I'm also not a student, but that's available if you're logged in. With that said, apparently, and it used to be that they would save your search if you log in, and I had a student run this with his account open or like signed in, I think about 2 weeks ago, and they just deleted everything. So at this point, I'm not sure where they stand on saving your data. So it might be that you have to pick your filters every time you go in, but just at least you'll be able to use the reach match safety ability. And then most students are going in for their bachelor's, right? But if you want anything else more than that, you can also enter, but at least put the bachelor's in, because then you can always switch universities for your master's. That's not the priority at this point, unless you know what field you want to get into and that you do want to go into your master's program. But that's the initial way to go about filtering universities to create your initial college list, okay? Particularly relevant for the current sophomores on the call. Then after that, so now I mentioned that, okay, but you still have to filter further. Now you're going on the university's website, and if you don't know what it is you want to study, that's some of the research you do. How is this university, who I'm giving a lot of money to, and my time to, well, the time is non-replaceable. Money you can make back, but the time is non-replaceable. How are they going to help you figure out what it is you want to do? That might be through the career center. Do they have career counseling? Okay, but what else? Not every career center is created equally. Not every academic program. So if you do know what it is you want to study, or like you have 3 different ideas of what you want to study, maybe graphic design and architecture, and computer science. Okay, look into the academics for all of those fields. So look into what are the classes you could be taking if you were to go in there, because just because you're going to graduate with some degree, the same degree across 10 universities could have 10 different experiences, including academic work. Okay, so do you like the academic work associated with it, or you don't? That it doesn't feel like it's in the direction that you would want to go into. There will always be the classes we don't like that we have to take, the math classes or the science classes or whatever it is. But outside of that, for the field of your study, are majority of the classes of interest. Okay. Then Career Center, explore it for not just how will they help you figure out what it is you want to do, which by the way, that works differently in every university. Some, like I said, could be through the Career Center that you figure it out. For most, it'll be career center. But then in addition to that, you might have an exploratory major and they tell you, hey, these are the certain classes we ask you to take. So you're getting a feel for all these variety of majors. Cool. Some might say, hey, there are these 2 classes we want you to take, and they have guest lecturers come in, and they're people who work in different industries and they talk about their jobs. That could be another approach the university takes. So it varies, which is why this research is so important from the very beginning. Career Resource Center, outside of that part, we have okay, but what else do you help with? Most will help you with your resumes and cover letters, but then after that, do you do mock interviews? Do you help connect with alumni? So let's say I might be interested in graphic design or computer science or architecture. Well, do you have an alumni network that's gonna be willing to talk to me about, and they work in that field so I can ask them about their jobs? Will you be the one that helps me connect to that? Or will I have to be the one to reach out to them, going with this whole, with the whole learning process? Like, how do I figure this out? How do I narrow this down? Then on top of that, are you going to help me with mock interviews? Do you have your own job fairs and job databases just for students? What are the service, how far do you go? Some universities will also have mentoring programs through their career center. So it varies so much. Like I said, not every university is created equally, and these are the points to keep an eye out for. Then, of course, academic support. So academic support, there's always going to be some kind of peer-to-peer tutoring available. And that's older students helping younger students out with the base level classes. The chemistries that everybody has to, the Gen Chem 1, the Gen Biology 1, basic pre-calculus or calculus 1. You'll have support for that. But then what else is going on? Any kind of other programs of interest. So co-ops are programs where students take a semester off and the university will help you find a job placement in the field of your study. So you are building your resume. You will also be earning a salary of some kind, and you're not a student that semester. Okay, so you're taking that semester off as a student, but the university organized your placement and everything. So if that's something you're interested in, where it's just hands-on learning, so converting all the in-class learning to practical experience, check out those types of programs. And those work differently at different universities as well. Some mandate co-op programs, like Drexel University mandates it. Some just offer it as options. Some offer it as options, but the moment you sign up onto that track, so let's say Purdue University, you're just automatically signed in for 5 years. So now, after your freshman year, because freshman year, you're kind of just doing the basic requirements, but after that, almost every other semester, you're doing a co-op. And it took only 1 application to apply to this entire 5-year program. So while you're graduating a year late, for most majors, if you're going for engineering, it's automatically a 5-year program anyway. But for any other major, it's a 4-year degree, but it's going to take you 5 years to complete. But you're walking out with experience, legitimate salary, or some level of legitimate salary. But and your chances of getting hired by one of those companies that you co-opt at are pretty high too, because they spent money and time training you. And if they like your work, they can make you an offer. So that's something to be aware of as a program. Of course, study abroads, but study abroads are also created differently, because some are just for fun, where you take BS classes, and then some are meaningful for your particular major. So I had a student, I keep using the architecture example because I had a student who was previously interested in architecture. Then he ended up going to cybersecurity, but he is interested in architecture. When we were doing his research, we were looking at, I think it was I forgot which university it was, American University or some of them. One of them had study architecture in Florence. Well, okay, that's a little bit more relevant to his specific major than just taking the Italian class while there, or taking the, let's say, French class. Great, but then are you taking other relevant classes to your area of interest, or are you just taking the literature class or the culture class, which is helpful, but you want to kind of put in some level of your particular academic connection to it, if that's important to you. If not, and this is the experience that you want, where it's just the surface level, so you get to explore the culture, then that's fine too, right? So just be aware of your options. And then, of course, student life. So what kind of student organizations? These are in order of priority, by the way. So keep in mind that academics comes first. Just because you really like the student life and study abroad co-op programs doesn't mean that you're going to like the academic program, which is the majority of what you're going there for. So something to keep in mind. And then, of course, any kind of mental health support, disability support. If you have ADHD, anxiety, depression, then what kind of counseling services, what support is available on campus? Okay. All right, so going back to the timeline, this is more for the current sophomore. Here's what's coming up for you. And for the current freshman, if you want to plan out your summer for going from 10th to 11th grade, this summer, do your test prepping. So I recommend that early summer, you go to, let's say, Princeton Review and just online. They'll let you do this online. You don't even have to leave the house. Or you can go to a local test prep company and take a mock SAT or ACT. So let me filter this out for you. With the testing, every university, majority, like 98%, they will accept both exams. So you don't have to say only SAT or only ACT. You pick the exam you do better on. Now, just to give you a little filter, if you have not taken pre-calculus or you struggle with math, then don't take the ACT, take the SAT. Or if you want a little bit more time per question, take the SAT, not the ACT. Okay. That's just a quick filter, but I highly recommend watching the SAT, ACT talk that we did in the library, or just, like I said, visiting my website, and you'll get notified when my 75-minute video on this whole testing process stuff is available. Okay. But looking at this, then you take the mock exams and then you prep for the exam you do better on, which again, I'm going to refer you back to the video because there's just too much content for me to dive in right now. And with respect to time, I don't want to, we're already at like the 1 hour mark and I don't want to dive into it and then open a whole big different project of information. So for now, just say that you take the exam, you prep for the exam that you do better on. Spend your summer test prepping. Do the heavy lifting here, because junior year will hands down be busy. Junior and senior year are going to be busy, and you want to front load as much of your work as possible so there's less college applications related stress in your life, because it gets overwhelming at some point if you try and do everything. And it's doable, others do it, but it's just they're stressed about it. So do your test prepping, and then if you're taking the SAT, you can test in August. This usually tends to be the last Saturday of August. Then you can do the first Saturday of October. It's the first Saturday. It's only August, that's an exception. SATs are the first Saturday of whatever month they're offered, usually. But you can ultimately be done by December. Same thing with ACT. You'll skip the July one because you will not be ready with your prepping by then, because ACTs happen middle of the month, SATs outside of August happen beginning of the month. So they never overlap on test dates. But you still have 3 opportunities before December. Now, everyone here is a public school student. So in public school system for Connecticut, we have the free in-state exam. We have the free in-state SAT offered in March. You want to treat that as your bonus exam. You don't want that to be, or one of your middle exams or your final exam if you were really busy around this time and you couldn't do your, let's say, 3rd take or something. But you don't want that to be the time you start testing, because then you'll have AP exams coming up in May and you'll have June finals. You have a lot of competition for study time. This is when I've lost students before, where they just have to keep canceling sessions, or they either come with their homework half done, or if they have it completely done, then they haven't used the strategies. They just rush through it to have it done for Priyanka. So she gets, we don't look bad or anything, but they didn't use the strategies. They rushed through it, might have even developed bad habits along the way, which we now have to spend time breaking. So it's not optimal time to do it then. If at that point, it's better to just wait until the next summer. But the following summer, you end up having to do your college essays, your supplementals, your resume and application essay. So it's already a 3 hours per day, 5 days a week required type of summer, not including any extracurriculars you're doing or family trips or anything like that. And if you add on test prep, you're looking at, let's say, 5 hours a day, at least 5 days a week type of summer. So in order to reduce that and give yourself some breathing space, better to do everything now, because here it could be 2 hours per day, 5 days a week here prepping, and then you have time to live a life. You can still have a social life. You can still do your extracurriculars or your sports conditioning or whatever it is, and still move forward in your college applications process. Okay. Any questions on anything so far? Okay. I'm not gonna, since it's not as relevant right now, we're not really gonna talk about the college essay, but just know that it's a quick max 650 words, minimum 250 words. The topics come out usually at this time, junior year, but you don't have to worry about it until that summer I told you about, the summer between 11th and 12th grade. Okay. Don't worry about that. It's just TMI, too much information right now. Interviews happen during senior year, so I wouldn't worry about that right now too. It's not relevant to anybody. Admission cycles, not a priority for you at this point in time either. Just to give you a quick glimpse, early action is not binding. Sorry. So it's just, I tend to remember it as early action. I acted early. That's it. It's just an early deadline. Early decision is binding. Parents, that means that after your teenager submits their application, whatever parent's email address they entered that parent will receive an electronic contract basically stating that if accepted, you're committed to attending this university. And then number two, that you also agree to pull your application. So you agree to reach out to everywhere else you've applied and you're going to pull your application. That's basically it. And if you've gone the binding route, then make sure that it's a place you can already financially afford, because financial packages and information will not be out by then. So you will not know how much you're getting paid or receiving any kind of aid for. So make sure you can pay for it out of pocket. And then also, you can't really get out of that agreement unless there's a large life, like an extenuating circumstance. So someone lost a job, like a parent lost a job and now finances changed, or a medical emergency, or whatever else it might be. That's pretty much the only way to really get out of an early decision. It can't just be, oh, actually, I changed my mind about the university. You can't pull that. Okay. Regular decision is just that one-stop shop, final deadline. And then rolling admissions, if you hear that, it simply means the university has an ongoing admission cycle of applications and acceptance cycle. So you'll hear them say, oh, you can start applying by September 15th until March 15th or February 15th. Any point you're welcome to apply. We'll let you know about 6 weeks after your application is submitted as to whether or not you were accepted. So it's an ongoing chain. Now, of course, if the university you're interested in is rolling admissions, apply early when they have more seats open, as opposed to later when there's more competition, because students who might have been rejected from other schools are also now going to start applying there as well. Okay. Maybe the timeline again. Okay, your next steps. So I recommend starting your college search. Kind of showed you how. Takes time because you're researching, deep diving into all those other points. And then part of your research process, you can sign up for those virtual tours. Do the virtual tours, see if based on your research process, if that university is worth it before you then spend the time and money doing the actual campus tour. Okay. That's my suggestion. But of course, if it's a university nearby and you just want to go check it out, then by all means, it's your process. I'm just letting you know what your options are. And then take a free SAT, ACT. This is for the sophomore. Princeton Review is just who I recommend because they're easy access online. And for the SAT, since it's digital, Princeton Review has their own app designed that's similar to the actual exams app. So you'll get to download the app and kind of run it in a similar to real scenario. So try that out as your next step. So for the sophomores. And then of course, start thinking about your extracurricular activities and maintaining your grades. All right. So once again, as a reminder, for all this information, for the more information on the SAT, ACT stuff, you can always check out my website, or the new website that's not up yet. But it should be up in this week. That's like the final call. It's supposed to be up this weekend, but I'm just going to ask for a leeway and say this week. But if you want to be notified of when that happens, I put the Google form in there. I'm only using it for notification. You're not automatically opted into anything. Everything is free because, like I said, 98% of this material I'm trying to make for free. Okay. Then just if needed, here is my contact information once more. But other than that, thank you so much for attending. I do have a course coming out, but that is in the works. And if you sign up at the website, you'll be notified, but I'm not even going to get into it too much. But it's just a way to help you systematically navigate your process if you'd like.